realization that nothing stands still, the realization that if you think you've conquered something and you become complacent, you're going to be overtaken. Hydrogen will not move the needle on its own. It's going to take all of the clean energies in that transition. It's not a battle. It's a cohesive playing field for everybody to exchange. It's not competition because we're creating an energy future based on clean energy opportunity. The hydrogen bank auctions are not agile enough or visionary enough to recognise the different scale of opportunity across Europe. And the hydrogen bank auctions reward those at the top, but there's a valley of death there that's not supported.
Today, I've got a guy who doesn't wait for the light to turn green. No, green means you're already late, he says. Our guest, he hits the gas on yellow. He's the founder of Hydrogen Ireland, a veteran engineer and a global clean tech whisperer who's been building the future while most of us were still Googling what B2X actually means. With more than 30 years in trenches, from renewables to software, then to power to X, he's taking more calculated risks than a Vegas blackjack dealer with a spreadsheet. He's won EU bids, secured international patents, helped push hydrogen out of science fiction and into industrial reality. And oh yeah, he's also got an MBA and invented something called 3D clustering, which sounds like either a genius innovation or something you get from a bad IT meeting. I suppose both. He's bold, he's fast, he's intellectually curious, and I'm just hoping I can keep up. Please welcome for the second time, Paul McCormack. Paul, welcome.
Arnes, thank you very much. That is one hell of an introduction. I only hope I can live up to it. I love the Texas connection, but my game wouldn't be blackjack. It'd be Texas Hold'em.
It's important to be a gambler.
Yeah, at calculated odds. At calculated odds.
So, Paul, I've been wondering what was the moment or a story that first drew you into the hydrogen space?
The realization that nothing stands still. The realization that if you think you've conquered something and you become complacent, you're going to be overtaken. And also the opportunity where countries such as my own Ireland don't have fossil fuel resources, don't have that fossil fuel opportunity, that we need to look for other opportunities. And other countries throughout Europe and the rest of the world need to look to see where energy opportunities can be harnessed to move away from that fossil fuel monopoly, to create a level playing field where everybody has the same chance there and harness the opportunities given to us by nature through solar, wind, and wave, and use that to create a balance in the world that creates a sustainable future for all, but also addresses a lot of not just the economic problems we have, but the socio-economic and the environmental problems that the world faces, and use clean energy as that catalyst for change.
How far along are we in this battle?
I like the use of the word battle because it is a battle, and some people conceive it as that, and it shouldn't be. It's a transition, and a transition where we can't keep looting and pillaging the world's resources for our own use and at what cost, and getting to a realization among people that there's opportunities there that we need to discover, develop, and utilize for the benefit of all, and move away from the confrontational fossil fuels, renewables, and make it more mutually inclusive, where there is a recognition that fossil fuels have a place to pay, or a place to play, sorry. We cannot switch the lights off overnight. And there is a transition away from fossil fuels, measured, calculated, and making sure that that transition to net zero by using clean energy benefits the majority, not at the cost of the minority, and that any shocks to the system are minimized, and that we don't end up with isolated communities or stranded investments, and that we utilize current infrastructure repurposed to take us on that journey to net zero and move away from the battlefield into an opportunity open for all.
Are we still thinking profitability over sustainability when it
When we
comes to industries?
when we talk about hydrogen, we're developing working at where the naysayers talk about the round trip inefficiency of hydrogen. We need to move away from singular indices of measurement and have a pathway of navigational opportunity. So when we talk about hydrogen, the terminology we now use is the round trip competitiveness that hydrogen brings, not just measured on a single economic vector, but measured economically, socially, and environmentally, where we look to the new energy equation with three denominators rather than the current old energy equation, and look to redevelop that equation that is fit for purpose in the new energy economy, and then realize that it's not about just economic value, it's the social value it brings, it's the environmental benefits it brings, and it's the opportunity to develop an energy system that doesn't just deliver energy but delivers equality, sustainability, and equity, and an access for all, where there's opportunity of access and opportunity of inclusion.
You're someone who's championed sustainability. Was there ever a time you doubted that hydrogen could move the needle on climate change?
Hydrogen will not move the needle on its own. It's going to take all of the clean energies in that transition. And it's the recognition that, yes, fossil fuels is a great solution we currently have, but there's not one single replacement for it. There's going to be a multitude of different replacements from bioenergy, biomethane, ethanol, methanol, ammonia, hydrogen, all of that, but all coming from clean energy vectors to give us that myriad of opportunities that different parts of the world can utilize depending on their opportunity and their position. So it's to move away from a singular solution to a singular problem, to recognize that we have problems, but to also then develop the myriad of opportunities that will address these problems, not just scientifically and economically, but also geographically, where solar, wind, bio, and wave will have different opportunities, and in the world that we call of the hydrogen playing field.
Walking into your office this morning, what question about hydrogen were you asking yourself before we even started?
The continual question is not about technology, it's about social acceptance, making sure we have the frameworks, the pathways, and the maps all drawn out. But importantly, that we have the legislation behind that to support that. Throughout history, innovation is driven by legislation. Without legislation in place, without the changes that we're currently asked for RED 3, the changes also on the Clean Energy Directive, the changes on the electrolysis problems, to look to see where it doesn't have to be delegated acts. We need to create an opportunity where the restriction of some of the EU legislation is removed to make it more flexible to allow innovation to take place. It's within those gaps that innovation will take place and flourish. And the French have a great word, vive la différence, celebrate the difference. Look to see where we can create that opportunity in Ireland that can be magnified and used in France and Germany, that can be then used in the Balkans, and the solution for solar then taken from Turkey and the Balkans across to fit, where we create an energy playing field where we can move the pieces as and when we need them and address the problems that we have, be they social problems, economic problems, environmental problems, and create a regional balance that's different in Ireland, Spain, Germany, France, Croatia, and to create that level opportunity we need.
When you think back, who or what shaped your belief that Europe could lead in clean energy?
We started out with a number of different projects. GenCom was one, and we had partners, Aegis in Germany, Pure Energy in Stornoway, High Energy in the UK, University of Galway in Ireland. and ourselves, and with our French partners in INSA and INSA Rouen, and we created three hydrogen pilots: wind to hydrogen in Ireland with Energia, solar to hydrogen in Germany for car refueling in with ETSIS, and bio to hydrogen in Stornoway with Pure Energy. Looking at hydrogen at different scales, different opportunities, and different end uses, and developing that opportunity, that blueprint, and realizing that we were at the start of a learning curve which is going to develop new energy opportunities for different regions, working in partnership with other projects across Interreg Northwest Europe, Clean Energy Partnership, Hydrogen Europe, and all the different partners, ensuring that opportunity. As we mentioned earlier, it's not a battle. It's a cohesive playing field for everybody to exchange. It's not competition because we're creating an energy future based on clean energy opportunity, using the wind, solar, and bio and other nature's powers to harness and develop energy autonomy for different regions and different countries, benefiting then from the jobs from that, from the energy benefit from that, and the learning from that to share that across the globe, where we reduce our carbon footprint, we accelerate the journey to net zero, we share the opportunities, we exchange the benefits, and ultimately, the winners out of that is everybody, where we remove the fossil fuel monopoly and create those opportunities to address the social problems that are currently afflict the world.
You said remove the fossil fuel monopoly. How big of a task is that?
It's one not to be underestimated. If you look at the our addiction to fossil fuels, it does everything from powering our cars, providing light to the houses, our plastics, and all of that. It's not a single solution; it's a multiple of solutions. And that hold that the fossil fuel industry have, we're not looking to replace them. You're looking to work with the industry to get them to transition slowly and develop the cumulative opportunities to be integrated within their system. So therefore you're utilizing their opportunities, their infrastructure, and work in partnership to create the new. So as we reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, we increase our opportunity in renewables. And it's creating that living balance and the infrastructure that provides the agility to address that imbalance. So we make sure that our energy balance is always there. We're not out of kilter, and that we create that agility in an economy moving forward. We reduce the impact on those that will be impacted by it, but also magnify the opportunities. Excuse me.
And I have to ask, can Europe seriously hit 10 MT of renewable hydrogen by 2030 without tripping over its own power grid?
Currently, I would have to say no, but there's already that recognition of a need for greater agility in the legislation that's there, removing some of the barriers that are prohibiting our clean energy environment, looking at the clean energy framework, looking at the delegated acts, looking at RED 3 and all of the others that are at times too restrictive and are at times create a friction in that environment that is reducing our opportunity. If we get the balance right geographically, we get the balance right then across Europe, and it's recognition that it's not one size fits all. What we use hydrogen for in Ireland is different to what's used in the UK and France and Germany because we have different markets, we have different industries, we have different opportunity. But we also have the recognition that hydrogen is not just there to address our current energy needs and our current carbon footprint. It's how hydrogen can be a catalyst for growth. And we look at the markets in AI and big data and data centers and how hydrogen and clean energy can be an opportunity for growth, but sustainable growth in these sectors and create a greater knowledge capital and create a greater opportunity for quality jobs and develop new economies, not just the fossil fuel economies that we currently rely on.
I've been struggling with this one. Do hydrogen bank auctions really level the playing field, or do they secretly hand the keys to big incumbents?
The hydrogen bank auctions are not agile enough or visionary enough to recognize the different scale of opportunity across Europe. You mentioned there about handing the keys to the biggest players. That rewards those of scale. But innovation is not all about scale. Innovation is that bottom up building, innovation, creativity. And as yet, we don't have the financial mechanisms to promote that bottom up. And the hydrogen bank auctions reward those at the top, but there's a valley of death there that's not supported. So it's either looking to redress some of that imbalance, make the hydrogen bank auctions more regionally agile, and recognize that it's not a one size fits all in the developing hydrogen market across Europe. And if you look to the winners in the hydrogen bank auctions, it's reflected in that thought process where the bigger players get rewarded because they have the strength, they have the financial muscle, and they have the bandwidth, whereas the innovative smaller players in the market struggle to get to that playing field or get across that line so they can engage. So in American football, you have your play lanes. How do we move the play lane and the rules closer to those that go going to create the great opportunity? Because we have the technologies to get us to the goals of 2030 in our carbon reduction. But beyond 2030, it's more innovation required and more technology innovation. And that's not recognized within the hydrogen bank auctions.
Paul, when you hear people say hydrogen is the answer for steel and cement, what's your honest take on the cost and feasibility?
If people are able to say hydrogen is the answer to one singular thing, they need to have the homework done. If we look at the energy costs in steel and cement, we look at the geographical costs, and replacing one energy source with a different energy source only brings temporary solutions. So it cannot be just looking at getting an energy solution. It has to be in the wider realm, in the circular economy. How does hydrogen play a part in changing that economy to make it greener and in changing that environmental and economic opportunity to create different growth and different opportunities there? If we look at the history of industrial evolution, markets move, markets change, and if we're agile enough, we're able to take advantage of that. If we're not, we get left behind. So therefore, not looking at hydrogen just as a singular solution for a singular industry, how does hydrogen become a more valued opportunity in addressing short-term needs, but more importantly, recognizing and targeting longer-term opportunities? And we've talked earlier about the data valleys, green valleys using hydrogen, and creating the AI growth opportunity that Europe could use. When President von der Leyen talked a number of years ago, the twin pillars of European recovery are clean energy and digital. How do we marry the two, not just to create recovery, but to create sustainable growth for Europe and beyond?
Talking about agility, how do you see hydrogen in China?
Hydrogen in China, there's a big market there for their own domestic market. There's also a big market there for closer cooperation between Europe and China and overcome some of that barriers that are there. Should we look at Chinese electrolyzers for European solutions? That'll be a problem because we put all our eggs in one basket. How do we create an interchange of ideas and create a two-way market? Traditionally, we've looked to China to provide most of our solutions in traditional markets. How do we develop a new exchange with China to create a two-way exchange where we work with China in exchanging ideas and concepts, technologies, and creating that circular economy where we can not just exchange technology but also energy and create that growth that the world needs. Again, we said earlier, it's not about competition, it's about collaboration and how we look to China and provide some solutions for them in exchange for solutions for us and create that exchange value.
China is the only place where hydrogen actually grows. And that's very interesting to see. And I think their approach should be very, very interesting.
It grows because of scale, it grows because of recognition, and it grows because of the agility they have in their legislation to make things happen. We should look at that playbook and say, right, what can Europe learn from that? What could we do differently? And what could we do better? And create that transition opportunity where it's not hedging at all costs, it's not hedging at any cost, it's hedging at the right cost, in the right place, at the right time. And get away from this mono view of hedging is going to create everything. It's not. It's where we can deploy it at best scale and best opportunity to create the best economic, environmental, and social rewards that Europe needs, and then use it to rebalance our economy.
Should Brussels simply mandate that refineries and steel plants must buy a slice of green hydrogen rather than waiting for voluntary offtake?
Once you create a mandate, you create a stick to beat somebody with, and you create animosity. If we think back to our own lives in school and work and anything, if you're told to do something, you will do it, but you do it with bad grace. How do we create the agility and the environment where stuff is done, but not done through obsequious obedience, done through the knowledge and the opportunity of a common growth and a common opportunity, where the steel industries, the cement industries, and other heavy duty carbon emitters work in partnership with other opportunities to create that translational benefit and integration benefit. One of the projects we're currently looking at with a number of different partners is co-electrolysis. How do we create hydrogen in a co-electrolysis environment and work with different partners outside of the traditional hydrogen only market? And that could be an opportunity for Europe beyond just mandatory legislation. Because mandatory legislation brings restriction, it brings friction, it brings obstacles, and it creates a lack of agility that people need.
Can a truly pan European hydrogen backbone survive national interests?
A true European backbone that's reflective of geographical differences across Europe will succeed because it will have the inbuilt flexibility to recognize the difference in Ireland, to the difference in Poland, and all of the different parts across, to the difference in Bulgaria, the difference in Hungary, the difference in Italy, where you have renewable opportunities, hedging opportunities, and they don't translate across. But that backbone has to have the flexibility and the agility recognized within the European legislation to create the opportunity, create the right innovation environment that will develop that. One of our goals in this year's conference in Ireland, the World Hydrogen Technology Congress in October, is looking at the total cost of hydrogen, where it's different across different countries, where the opportunity is different, but where countries such as Ireland can be a test bed for new technologies that can be developed, brought through the nascent stages, and then magnified by use in larger states that have larger opportunities. And it's how we create that greenhouse growth effect where countries such as Ireland that can be the nursery of growth, but then take the technology and opportunity elsewhere to bring scale and growth that's there. And if the backbone, the hydrogen backbone truly reflected that, we then create an economy with the depth and the bandwidth that will benefit all.
Is the EU's regulatory maze, Red ETS 10E, giving small innovators indigestion?
It's causing a lot of headaches because it brings friction. It brings friction to the table. And even if you look at the simple thing where the grant system is stop start, there's not a continual flow. The next round of funding has yet to be decided. So, what happens in innovation within a void, within a vacuum? Nothing happens. So, that legislation needs to be more fluid. It needs to be more regionally respective of the differences we've talked about. It also needs to recognize the opportunities are also there and to create, you use the word mandatory, to take that mandatory system out, make it less obligatory, but reward those that are going to take the chance. It's innovation, so therefore innovation brings risk. So how can we have legislation there that recognize the risk, but also gives people the impetus to challenge that, to move forward, not in a safe environment, but in an environment that is safer than is currently there. So how do we create a safer environment for innovation and growth in clean energy? Is to take the sharp edges off the legislation, make them more rounded, and take those square corners away.
If Europe leans on Asian electrolyzer imports, are we really leading or just following?
Again, innovation throughout the years. We've always relied on imports on different technologies. We have always gone with the workforce is cheaper, things can be done cheaper, but and there's a recognition now, if, as there was 20 years ago, where companies offshored all of their manufacturing and therefore they lost control. If we offshore all of our technology developments, we don't have control. And in the new clean energy environment, we must look to manage control of the whole of the supply chain, the whole of the value chain. And yes, maybe have parts of the energy system coming from different parts of the world, but how do we create a system that allows us to manage that whole value chain? And we talked about it earlier about the China hydrogen opportunity. How do we create a cohesive partnership there where we work in tandem? Where instead of just import export, where do we create that collaborative environment where we can control the supply chain, we control the opportunities, and we have greater visibility? And it's that visibility of opportunity. If we can share that and give that recognition, that removes the friction from the system. It allows us then to develop our technologies domestically or also internationally, but in balance and in tandem, and therefore retaining the agility that the clean energy economy requires.
And what if Europe admitted upfront it needs to import hydrogen? How would that shift our infrastructure plans?
There's a recognition that countries within Europe have to import hydrogen, whether they import it from within Europe or import it from outside of Europe. And some of the discussions that we have had with yourself, Arne, is how do we look to the Balkans as a very vital part of that supply chain of meeting the new clean energy demands within Europe? The infrastructure is there within the Balkans. How do we repurpose that and use that to import clean energy into Europe? And with that part of Eastern Europe becomes the energy breadbasket for Europe, along with Ireland and Spain. So therefore, we can create the energy balance we require. And whether we call it import or they call it export or whatever, how do we use energy to create a more balanced Europe? So therefore, we don't have the demarcation, those within the European Union, those without, those at accession states, where energy becomes the currency of the future and the recognition of opportunity. And we create the recognition of the agility that different geographies, different partners, different countries bring, and whether we see them as a valued part of that value chain. And we have that visibility of the whole value chain, be it in energy generation, energy distribution, energy storage, and energy use. And we see then with the different players in the field, the different partners, all bring value to that end equation that we talked about.
You mentioned energy storage. Are we sleepwalking into storage shortage by underestimating our needs for salt caverns and long distance pipelines?
Well, as we generate hydrogen, there's a certain amount of immediate use, but you quite rightly said there about storage. We must look to storage as part of the solution. We cannot look again in isolation at generation, storage, distribution. You have to look at it in the whole. So therefore, storage is an opportunity that has to be recognized. It's a challenge that has to be recognized. We look at the current amount of infrastructure that's there. How can that be repurposed to meet some of the storage solutions? How can new technology, new opportunities such as salt cavern storage and other storage mechanisms, how can they be examined to bring us beyond the 2030 goals to recognize the opportunity in sustainable energy through generation, distribution, and storage, and recognize that in a true energy equation, not all storage for that country has to be domestic. It can be stored elsewhere and called on demand, as we do in the financial markets. How do we take that knowledge into energy markets where countries such as Croatia or whatever could store energy for European use and European demand and then balance that moving forward? So it's not creating a single country solution. It's how we look at Europe in the wider solution, where the Balkans and other parts of Europe are able then to become more significant players and be recognized for the true value that they bring to the market.
Let's look at this from a different perspective. When you look at Fuel EU for shipping and Refuel EU for aviation, do you see wasted energy or genuine progress?
I see a hesitancy at genuine progress because of that lack of recognition of the challenge that is there, but also the opportunity that is there. As we transition to net zero, the lower hanging fruit is going to be tackled first, such as mobility, heavy industries on land or whatever. Aviation and maritime are further down the value, are further down the demand chain. But that doesn't mean they should be relegated and left to last. It should be a concurrent development there. And where the opportunities in technology being developed now are translated into those sectors and vice versa. We can't look at it as a stop start across different technologies, different opportunities. It has to be looked as a more on the whole a circular economy where innovation for mobility is also brought that innovation learning into aviation and innovation learning into maritime, and how we share that innovation on a wider European geographic need, and then look at the opportunities that are there again on infrastructure repurposing and make sure there's no stranded assets, and the transition is measured, the transition is calculated, and therefore it is an iterative process, not stop start, and not seen in isolation.
Is Germany's push to delay additionality proof that ambition is outrunning reality in Brussels?
Delaying additionality brings its own challenges. And in the problems that we've had in the clean energy economy, where people thought it was going to happen overnight, we've come through that realization. There's been a sobering of the markets, and now we're back to a reality check. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in splendid isolation. It must work in partnership. The markets we are looking to replace must also work with those that are going to replace them, not in splendid isolation. So the fossil fuel markets, the clean energy markets, and all of the different actors in there working in tandem with a recognition of opportunity, not seen as it currently is as a challenge or an obstacle. How do we remove those and create the environment that people see the benefit, recognize the challenges, and also then tackle those challenges as we move forward. So therefore the impact is lessened, the shock is lessened, and the benefits are magnified. And it's in recognizing that it's not working your way down through the value chain one at a time. It's making sure that we have that cascade effect across, and where lessons are learned geographically, sectorally, and environmentally.
With the US handing out massive hydrogen tax credits, are EU rules just slowing us down?
What happens in the US, handing out the tax credits, and the president there with his calls for drill, baby, drill when he was elected, creates an environment for Europe to benefit from, to learn from, and to take advantage. So if we look at what works elsewhere, distill it down, what works here. It's back to that hydrogen topography we talked about. Different markets, different rules, different applications, and that agility to move. Look at the size of the American market with no internal barriers. Look at the size of the European market and still some internal friction. So, how do we develop a model that is suitable for the growth of Europe, for the energy security of Europe, and for the sustainable future of Europe as going to be one of the, the biggest economic powerhouses globally, and use the opportunity for the euro to become the currency of clean energy, which creates an economic opportunity then for Europe to build upon beyond just our energy needs, but to create that competitive growth that Europe requires to move not just now, but into the future.
And Could hydrogen CBAM protect our industries or just spark trade wars and higher bills?
I wouldn't use the phrase hydrogen to protect our industries. Hydrogen would reinforce our industries, but also give us the window of opportunity for developing new industries of the future, and also to be the catalyst for the fourth industrial revolution, where hydrogen being a clean energy vector will have different opportunities, different end results, and different impact that we require moving across. So it's where we use hydrogen not just to meet our current needs, but also as that window of opportunity where we need to navigate for the future for an economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, but also importantly, social sustainability. When we look at some of the social problems affecting the world, food shortages, migrancy, how does clean energy become part of that solution to address those challenges?
Are these definitions of clean hydrogen that are so fractured across member states undermining the single market?
Again, once you come out with a definition, it's a single line. And that's the problem because people then see that as a limit rather than as a goal. It's like a speed limit. You don't have to reach it as fast as you can, you got to stay below it. So, how do we come to an opportunity where green hydrogen definitions within a European legislation could have derogations depending on geographical opportunity and recognize that as we move through that development of hydrogen, there's need for flexibility of definition where it's not one size fits all, where we can importantly harness the current energy that's lost to the system from renewables through grid saturation, through curtailment, through dispatch down, that the current definitions don't allow for that. And there's up to nearly 20% or 25% of our current energy opportunity being lost that we could address overnight by bringing that flexibility into the definitions, allow us to harness that energy that's currently lost, and increase our momentum towards net zero.
You mentioned public awareness a lot. Do public fears risk stalling pipelines and refueling stations overnight?
Public fears are magnified through what I call the naysayers of clean hydrogen. If we look at the infrastructure that's there, how do we repurpose it? How do we build public confidence in an emerging market? How do we create that opportunity and the recognition that this change is not about change because we must do it? It's about change for a better opportunity and a better destination that will bring not just opportunity for this generation, but brings transgenerational growth for future generations to enjoy a cleaner atmosphere, cleaner environment with the economic rewards that are there, and use those as the levers for change rather than just cost and emissions, and where we have that clash of competition we talked about earlier between fossil fuels and clean energy. Literally, they are the same side, they're different sides of the same coin, and come to that recognition where they should be in cohesion, not in competition.
And tell me, when you think about regional inequality, does it pain you that hydrogen investment might leave Eastern Europe behind?
Through all of my work across Europe, I recognize that Europe is not a level playing field. There are different measures and levers, especially in skills and energy, that could be used in Europe to create that level playing field, to create a greater cohesive atmosphere. It will not leave Eastern Europe behind because Eastern Europe is the gateway for clean energy, as we talked about earlier, through Croatia, Slovenia, Slovakia, and that Balkan region. How do we use the solar opportunity in that part of the world, along with the wind opportunity in different parts of Europe, to create that energy nexus that Europe requires? And the recognition of a partnership approach that if different parts of Europe are contributing to the equation, they're recognized that they're bringing benefit and that the rules recognize that and has the flexibility for that, where even the hydrogen bank auctions will be reflective of the different geographical opportunity and recognize the geographical indifference and differences that are there across Europe to bring everybody to the same starting point and create a level playing field there across Europe.
So you're telling that actually Eastern Europe could be of very good use for the Western Europe when it comes to hydrogen.
We have a number of different projects in hydrogen Ireland across Eastern Europe, working with Ukraine, working with Hungary, working with different countries there, recognizing that the hydrogen valleys of Eastern Europe are just as important as the hydrogen valleys of Western Europe. And where the learning about the valleys is more important, and the exchange of information, the exchange of knowledge, and the creation of that opportunity of a hydrogen backbone that is truly reflective not just of European need, but of European opportunity, and create a sustainable future that increases the competitiveness of Europe and brings it to the true powerhouse globally that it should be.
You mentioned naysayers. Is there a moral dilemma in pushing hydrogen when simpler solutions like efficiency or direct electrification are right there?
It's not one or the other. It's not
Yeah.
hydrogen at all cost or hydrogen at any cost. It's hydrogen as part of a circular economy and a circular solution. But something you said there, the first step on our route to net zero is efficiencies. Look at the current inefficiencies in a renewable system where we have energy being dispatched, lost, curtailed, and paid for that doesn't make its way to the end goal. How do we create a system that captures those lost efficiencies as the first step? And hydrogen is that energy integer that will help capture that lost energy.
Paul, what was the personal cost of betting your career on hydrogen?
There is no personal cost, it's personal opportunity. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think it was there. And reward in career is like the reward in the clean energy environment. You cannot measure reward on pure economics alone. If you enjoy what you're doing, if you believe in what you're doing, and you see a safe, secure future, not just for yourself, but for your children and your children's children, and it's creating that transgenerational opportunity that clean energy will bring to Ireland, to France, to Germany, Croatia, and all across Europe.
If you could leave policymakers and investors with one bold piece of advice on hydrogen's future, what would that be?
Recognize the benefits, create an environment that will harness the opportunity, and bring it forward together as part of an integrated solution that recognizes, whilst Europe is a European Union, recognize the regional and geographical differences there, and create the flexibility in the legislation and in the technology adaptation, where it's not technology neutral, it's technology adaptive, and create the funding mechanisms, the project opportunities, and the legislation that will deliver that.
And finally, for the end, can you tell us more about the conference in October?
21st to 23rd of October in Dublin, we have the Hydrogen Ireland World Hydrogen Technology Congress. It's looking at the environmental, social, commercial, and sustainable impact of hydrogen. And the focus of the conference is total cost of hydrogen, not just the economic cost, the environmental cost, the social cost, not just of doing it, but the cost of not doing it, and looking at the opportunity cost and how we create that vision where hydrogen is part of that European and global solution. We have speakers coming from across the world, from America, from China, and all across Europe and Australia, looking to share and to create that 3 day opportunity of engagement, sharing, building ideas, building cohesion, looking at projects for the future, influencing legislation within the governments of Ireland in the north of Ireland and the south of Ireland, working very closely with Hydrogen Council, Clean Hydrogen Partnership, and Hydrogen Europe with speakers from there to create that opportunity where Ireland, yes, is the test bed and can be the test bed for clean energy, but it's a nursery. How do we take those technologies and magnify them for deployment across Europe and across the globe and deliver an energy opportunity that all can benefit from, that can and the agility within the implementation for those to take and deploy.
Paul, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Arne, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Looking to amplify your brand in the hydrogen energy sector? Welcome to H2 Energy News, your go-to platform for impactful industry insights. Every month, we connect with over 80,000 visitors and generate more than 251,000 page views. Our reach is unmatched with over 1.2 million web impressions and a loyal social media following of 9,000 plus. Our newsletter reaches 77,000 plus subscribers, decision makers, industry leaders, and innovators. Want to target specific markets? Our geo-targeting capabilities cover Europe, the United States, and the MENA region. We reach key stakeholders, 27% senior executives, 32% directors, and 20% owners and partners. H2. Energy News isn't just a news platform, it's where the hydrogen energy community converges to shape the future. Join us and let's make an impact together. Visit energynews.biz and take your brand to the next level.